So this is part 2 of the little few verses from Shantideva about joyous effort. And I'll read from the beginning. I can't remember, I did this maybe 2 or 3 days ago, the first part. And it said, without indulging in despondency, I should gather the supports for enthusiasm and earnestly take control of myself. Then by seeing the equality between self and others, I should practice exchanging self for others, and I should never indulge in despondency by entertaining such thoughts as, how shall I ever awaken? For the Tathagatas who speak what is true have uttered this truth. Even if they develop strength of their exertion, even those who are flies, mosquitoes, bees, and insects will win the unsurpassable awakening, which is so hard to find. That should make us feel a little more enthused. So if I do not forsake the Bodhisattva's way of life, why should someone like myself, who has been born in the human race, not attain awakening, since I am able to recognize what is beneficial and what is of harm? So we have the great opportunity of having this kind of body where we have a mind that can analyze and understand things in a way that's not so instinctual as it is for like insects. You know, they can do a lot, but a lot of their things are kind of hardwired as compared to ours. Ours may feel hardwired, but they're actually much looser. I'm wondering, I think it's maybe not so different between animals and humans. It's just a matter of maybe the degree, you know. Does that make sense? We have habitual tendencies, and in a way there's like, to me it's like a continuum of complete freedom and control over your mind versus kind of being captured by these habitual tendencies that give you less control versus being instinctual level of maybe an insect or an animal sometimes. And so to me I see that sometimes as this level of freedom that we have that increases as we are able to take advantage of this human situation. And then we have things that are more subtle that feel like instincts to us. And I think Jeffrey Hopkins was saying once that when you have some of the things that we talk about when we talk about the mind being conceptual, we think of that as very heady and very thought. But he is always saying conceptual thought has a very subtle aspect that I think sometimes when we talk about intuition, those things are still conceptual thought and they feel much more subtle. So we have all of that going on in us. And then, but anyway, then Shantideva goes on about joyous effort, and he then kind of gets into like the wake-up call a little bit, like of what we're doing. But nevertheless, he says, but nevertheless it frightens me to think that I may have to give away my arms and legs without discriminating between what is heavy and what is light. I am reduced to fear through confusion. For over countless myriads of eons, I have been cut, stabbed, burned, and flayed alive innumerable times, but I have not awakened. So there, he's kind of like, this is the retort of the person like, whoa, woe is me. You know, I've had all these, say you have the Buddhist worldview and you grow up with it. I've had all these previous lives and here I still am. I've had all this suffering in all these previous lives and here I still am. And he's pointing to that we're not discriminating what's between what's light and what's heavy, and we're not practicing because we're reduced to fear through confusion. And then he goes on to explain this. He says, yet the suffering involved in my awakening will have a limit. It's like the suffering of having an incision made in order to remove and destroy greater pain. Even as doctors eliminate illness with unpleasant medical treatments, so in order to overcome manifold sufferings, I should be able to put up with some discomfort. So this is what I think that we experience in our practice, is that it's not all easy. You know, challenges come up. We still have all of our crazy thoughts, even once we start practicing the Dharma. We have to learn how to recognize them, which is, you know, that is a process. And even once you recognize them, then you have to learn how to work with them, and that's another process. And in all of that, there's things that come up that feel quite challenging and painful. But then when you put that, this is the confusion that we have. We make that fearful, and really we haven't. When we're in that place, our mind is kind of contracted. We don't see the big picture. The big picture is like you're going to the doctor and you're going to have bear this treatment in order to cure yourself, right? So then he goes on, now that he's given you the little lesson, then he goes on to say, but the Supreme Physician does not employ common medical treatments such as these. With an extremely gentle techniques, he remedies all the great ills. And so then it goes forward explaining how the Buddha, in his wisdom, knew that you can't give the same medicine to everyone, and that we're all different, and that in order to bring people along, he had to teach people differently. And so, for instance, just, like the example with, it's kind of an easy one is to think about, is there was a man, I think it was, who was really, really stingy. He was also very wealthy, but he couldn't give anything away. So the Buddha said, well, just take a carrot and take it from one hand and put it in the other. He could give it from one hand to the other, and that's how he started. And then he eventually became very generous, which is, something that we try to train in. Or so there's many examples of this, of how, and even why the Buddha taught different belief philosophical systems, trying to lead people in a direction that would get them to the final goal, so they wouldn't fall off to one extreme or the other, because people are, if you're kind of heading to the left, the Buddha has to say go right. But if you're heading to the right, he's got to say go left. And then, so there's the different things that the Buddha teaches to whoever's in front of them for what they need. And then he starts easy, just like we do in our training here, just like how the Abbey was set up. When we first came here, there were no monastics except for Venerable Children, and she has slowly over the years, as imparted the monastic lifestyle and training, and she didn't start that right away. She just brought things in gradually as the years went by, so that we could accustom ourselves to these things.